Okay, we're pinned. Well, everybody, thanks for joining. This is Jason Beatty and Liong Ma, and we're here talking about Liong Ma design knives. Liong, thanks for joining.
Hey, thank you for having me here. I
I'm glad
appreciate
we
it.
could do this. It
Yeah.
just occurred to me I didn't change the logo at the top of the screen. I should have changed it to your logo. Oh well,
Oh.
too late now. Can't look back. So I've known Liong for several years, and I've owned your knives for several years now. And I first came across your designs through our friend Tom Moore, who was, I believe, the first to land one of your knives, at least in my circles. And I remember he just would not stop telling me about how good they were and how nice they were and how nice they felt in his hand and just how functional they were to him. And then I remember meeting you at Blade Show, and I got to sample more of your work, and I was really impressed. So I've been a fan for a few years, and I'm excited to be able to talk to you today.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, Tom, and speaking with Tom, he mentioned that he met me earlier than when you and him came up to my booth a couple of times, a couple of years ago at Blaze Show. And he was like, "Yeah, I met you early. Do you remember?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, I don't." But I'm like so glad that you actually took the time to come up and handle my knives, because that's always like, you gave me a chance. And so I always appreciate when someone give me a chance and actually feel the knives and actually, like, they may not tell me what they think at the time, but later on they come back and they tell me. And I receive like really good responses and really good feedback from people. And I really take that to heart, because like I put a lot of time and effort into how a handle and how my knife feels overall in someone's hand, you know
I've, I've noticed sometimes, especially in creative endeavors, you can really put 1,000 hours into something, and you get tunnel vision where you're certain that this is going to resonate, and then when you touch it, your customers and your customers can experience the product that you've designed. Sometimes the feedback you get is can be surprising, right? It's just not exactly what you anticipated because in your head you've kind of worked it up. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And sometimes, I spend so much time on it that sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I spent so much time on this. But it's like the goal is to really like wow somebody, or to really like when someone gives me a shot and they're like, hey, you know what? I kind of realize now why people like his stuff, because we live in an age, and I bring this point up multiple times. We live in an age where we have really great products from
Absolutely.
everybody,
Yeah.
right? And everybody's bringing their A game to the table. So it's like, okay, what is going to separate me from someone else? What is going to be how someone going to recognize my stuff, and why would they? Because there's so many knives that are very similar on the market right now. So a lot of things are in the details, and so as like a knife user like you, am I always willing to pay for the details? Am I always willing to go shop for them and go hunt for them? And there are people who are, and there are people who are like, no, no, I just want this beater. But the ones who are real enthusiasts, that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed with your knives, I'll I'll really look at them close, like analyze the details of the features and the options that you build into them, and I'll go, oh, this is an upgrade, and this is an upgrade, and I know that's an upgrade, and this is not standard, and this is an upgrade. And by the time you total them all up, you look at the knife and go, wow, this is really a premium knife. In most cases, even your simpler designs, you're not skipping on the little things. And I have a feeling that's because you're appealing to that discriminant buyer. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, like, I do a lot of limited edition. Like, so
Right.
let's say, take for example, the Warrior 2, right? And usually I just do runs of like 200 pieces. But inside those 200 pieces, I may have 4 to 5 different handle SKUs, and even also blade finishes. And with the GSD, we were able to bring out even more SKUs. And some of them, instead of like 40 pieces or 50 pieces, it was only 15, right? And it was just like, does this really make sense? I'm like, you know what? I don't want to like go do so many of this. So I've been very fortunate to be able to do things on a much smaller SKU level. And for some things, it doesn't make sense. Like, there are people who really like stonewashed titanium, right? And I do too. So for that, I'll probably do like 85 to 100 pieces. And that's fine because that will actually has a market to sell it. But for some of the other ones where it's like hand rub satin finish, not everybody wants the hand rub satin finish. Not everybody wants like the latest fat carbon, or even pay the premium for it. So for that, I kind of am. I'm glad that I don't have to charge the premium for that and just get
Right.
like people just want like the really good knife. There's
Hmm.
still premium ingredients, but it's not polished to the end.
One example of a premium ingredient that on the top of my head is the texture that you put on the titanium.
Yeah.
So stonewash tie is extremely common in the market. A blasted tie is also popular, and what stonewashed and blasted both have in common is they're not super durable. Like we see a lot of snail trail comments on secondhand knives in the market. Guys will ask, "How do I get rid of a snail trail?" It's like, oh, you need a blasting cabinet and the exact same kind of blasting material that they used the first time. That's the answer. Whereas your texturized titanium, it's a brushed
Yeah.
finish, isn't that true?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Very
So,
durable.
like on the field duties that you and Tom have,
Mhm.
I like to do that orange peen, which is they do it with a wire wheel, and what that does is it hits the titanium with like all these thousands of wires, right? It's a
Right.
spinning wheel, and it's creating like this hardened side on the titanium.
Hmm.
And so you could put it in your pocket, and it's going to be harder to scratch than all the other titanium surfaces, because it's already super scratched up to a point where it's evenly surfaced that way. And that's actually one of my favorite finishes. Now that same titanium will not anodize
Right.
because we're putting so much steel on top of the titanium that there's actually a layer of steel oxide onto the titanium. So in order to anodize that, we had to polish that wire wheel off to be able to anodize that titanium again.
Yeah, there's a property in titanium. It's sometimes known as work hardening,
Mm-hmm.
where when you rub it, or in this case wire wheel it, it actually makes the titanium harder, not softer. Whereas blasting will make it softer, not harder, because it becomes porous.
Yep.
So what happens on this wire wheel texture is that it's actually more scratch resistant because the hardness is increased. So it's a really good choice, and it's something that probably isn't cheap. I know some people will refer to it as orange peel, which is generally a pejorative. It's not a compliment, but it does resemble that texture a little bit. For those
Yeah.
who are watching, that's kind of the idea, is that it's texturized like an orange peel, or a like it looks like it has pores in it.
Yep.
But ultimately, what's happened is I've carried this knife a fair amount, and I don't have any scratches. I don't have any marks in it at all, despite having keys in my pocket, or wedding bands, or whatever, watch bands bumping up against my knife. It doesn't scratch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So in all the years I've been doing it, that is probably the most durable of all the titanium finishes. And it takes time because when the titanium contacts the wheel, it makes it hot.
right,
So it's like whoever they're doing it, they probably fasten it onto like a working block, so they're not physically holding the titanium. But I've seen them hold like the clips and the backspacer because the fastest way to do it is to pick it up and rub it up against the wheel. But after if they keep holding onto the same spot, it will get hot, really hot.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I wanted to ask you about a little bit about your origin in the knife making world. I know you haven't always been a knife designer, but why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into this?
So I was always fascinated with knives. When I was a kid, my uncle would collect rifles.
Hmm.
And back in those days, whenever he bought a new rifle, they would give him like a buck knife. And he would just hand it to me. And looking at those knives now, and I will always look for ways to improve the the handle, improve how the grip was in your hand. And I just started drawing, and I kept drawing and I kept drawing. Well, one day it was just like, it would be so great if someone made my knife. So I actually started reading books, and there are several books I've read, including Bob Terzol's book. There's another book, How to Build Folding Knives. And after looking and reading those books, I threw out all my drawings because none of them would have worked, right? And I went into stenciling, and I stenciled all the designs, and then I would cut up pieces of paper and put them onto like plastic sheets, like really thin plastic sheets that you can use an X-Acto knife and just cut it out and it'll
Right.
bend. And with those X-Acto sheets, then I'll put a spot where the pivot would be the stop pin and the opening mechanism. And it got me closer and closer to where I wanted to go with a knife design. You know, it's still very, very prehistoric, because if you wanted to change the line, you kind of have to like erase and leave a mark and all this other
Right.
stuff.
Right.
And after a few of those, and just going to knife shows and discovering that people actually made knives for a living, which was like mind blown at the time, right? It was like, people actually do this for a living? Because I always thought like a factory made knives, right? But people actually can craft knives. So I would approach them and talk to them about their knives. And after building up a relationship with them and, asking them like, would they build my design?
Right.
Now, when you ask someone that, there's going to be two thoughts. One of them is going to be like, okay, he probably wants this design of mine, but maybe change the blade a little. Or there's no way he has anything that I have never thought of before, right? So I would go there with like these plastic cutouts and my stencil drawings, and they're like, wow, okay, this is different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and then eventually, like, as I gain more traction in like asking more and more people to produce my knives, and then knife makers are a small group, so they'll ask each other, how is it to work with him, how is this, and they were like, hey, his drawings are good, you know and I'm not saying like I've never had any failures in that. I've had failures, and I just
Sure.
keep going forward.
Yeah.
So with that, it kind of got me like a reputation, like, hey, you can work with this guy, and you could, and his drawings are good, so that allowed me to get more prototypes built, and then initial runs. And back then I used to do a
What
run of
year?
10.
What year was this, by the way?
Whew, 94.
94. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And it was just, Eddie Baca was one of the first makers I've worked with. He's from New
Mhm.
Mexico, and I knew him before his son was born. And now his son has finished college and is working for Wicked Edge.
Oh, wow.
So it's like some of these relationships really go back.
That's funny.
Yeah. And it's like, and he still builds everything by hand. Still builds everything, still cuts everything out by hand. And it's just like
Mhm.
amazing. Like, like the precision on some of his knives are amazing. So as I wanted to push the envelope more, I got a copy of Cat. And it took me about 6 months to kind of learn some of the basics on CAD, and to actually like be patient enough, because you're gonna sit down and you're gonna open it up, and just to draw a few lines and then erase it. Frustration is really easy to set in. Okay. And so you gotta be patient, and then you gotta
Yeah.
come back, you gotta close the program out, come back when you are like, okay, I'm more patient now. And then with that, I drew like about 10 drawings. And then I found out that Eddie Baca's wife was an AutoCAD engineer. She's an architect. And I asked if it would be okay for her to look over my drawings to see if they're okay. And then she told me, Leon, no one can ever handle your knives. Your handles are 5 feet long and your blades are 4 feet long. It's too big for any humans to handle them.
Oh no, you had the scaling wrong.
And I was just like, I was laughing my butt off when she told me that.
That's funny.
And so it got, but it was awesome because it was like, okay, I made mistakes, and now I get to learn from them. And then
Right.
other other makers were also AutoCAD engineers, like Larry Davison. He was the first one who did 3D texturing on G10 and then eventually now on titanium. But he was the first one to do all those 1911 grips with
Hmm.
3D texturing.
Hmm.
So he also, like, I approached him to look at my drawings, and he gave me pointers and everything. And so it's like there's been a lot of people who gave me pointers and helped me along the way. And I really appreciate all the free knowledge that everybody has been giving me.
Yeah.
And they're willing to help me, you know. So like whenever someone comes up to me and asks me about um producing knives in China, I'm going to advise them, because other people have helped me in the past, you
Right.
know. And this is just a way to pay it forward. There's been a lot of guys who ask me like what to do and who to talk to, but nowadays it's sort of like the best time to be a knife designer. Like, yeah, there are people who told me they just made a sketch on a napkin and gave it to a company and they produced it. I'm like, that has never happened to me in my life.
I have noticed overall there are some outliers that don't want to help, but for the most part, I'm finding that the community is very embracing of new people, and they generally sincerely want you to succeed.
Yeah,
And I'm finding that they're definitely sharing wisdom, which is really wonderful.
yeah. And a lot of people in the business, they're coming from other fields. Like I used to be a chef, right?
Hmm.
And being a chef, working with knives every day for about anywhere from 12 to 18 hours a day, it kind of got me noticing like what really worked on knives. And that is where I put some of my design language in. That's why one of my most popular knives is the kitchen utility folder.
Right.
And that folder has been around since like 2004, and it's before anybody else did like a, a, a kitchen style folder, because most people didn't really think about doing it that way. Or they're like, well, knives can already do that. I'm like, yeah, but I want one where the blade is actually dropped down from the handle, like most kitchen knives are. And that's where that started from. It's like, why don't I make a folder that resembles a kitchen knife? You know?
That's
And
become a very popular market segment. I can think of several makers that have kitchen folders, and or even pocket knife designers that are now designing kitchen knives, to go
yeah,
with their other knives that they're making because there's a demand for it.
yeah,
So the crossover is definitely there.
yeah. And the thing is that, I think everybody tries to bring something to the forefront, and that's just how this market keeps moving forward.
Right.
Whether it is design, whether it's materials, whether it's just the way things fold or mechanisms that lock the blade open, those are all pushing the industry floor forward.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's all necessary. Yeah.
You talked a little bit earlier about prototyping using the soft plastic. I wonder, is that still your process now, or do you prefer 3D printing?
I I have I haven't done the plastic cutout for years. Ever
Right.
since I learned CAD and then eventually learned SolidWorks.
Hmm.
And I do it kind of backwards in the sense that I learned CAD first. So I still draw all my 2D drawings in CAD,
Hmm.
in AutoCAD. And then I export a DXF into SolidWorks and I extrude from there. And then everybody's like, why don't you just do the whole thing in SolidWorks? But for some reason, my brain doesn't want to work that way. Right. So one day I'm going to get there. But at this moment, I still utilize two different programs for this.
Okay.
But you can do the whole thing either in Fusion 360 or SolidWorks,
Right.
and they both work on CNC machines and Mastercam and all those things that run cams. And so you can do all that, on one. But for me, because I have done this for a while now, and I know I always measure the length of my palm and my hand, and I measure the handle. And this is where I kind of get a good gauge of like how it's going to lay in my hand. and the way I position clips where it doesn't really bite into a user's palm.
Hmm.
Because that was one of my earliest experiences where I'm like, whoa, I'm not gonna carry this knife if this clip bites into my palm. So
Yeah.
I know that, and I'm like, it doesn't matter how beautiful the knife is or how well it's made if no one's gonna carry it because it pinches your palm.
There's a lot of popular knives out there in the world that if you were to actually stand still and cut for 15 minutes, you wouldn't want the knife anymore
Yeah.
because once you start using it, you realize, man, there's 12 hot spots in this handle. I'm going to get bruises all over my hand. I can't wear gloves while I'm working. I
Yeah.
just want to cut something.
And that's how a lot of people start, you know, when they design a knife, the clip is like the last thing they think about.
Right.
And so it is one of the things that I really focus on because I look at the way things lay out in the handle. And some of it, before when I was doing mostly frame locks and really all frame locks and liner locks, I wanted the clip to be switchable from righty to lefty because I do know that there are a lot of lefties out there who carry a righty knife, but they might want to carry it in their left hand, you
Hmm.
know. But now, with the different locks that are both ambidextrous, I think we have to do things that way because we don't want to have like two different types of clip, right? So we want it to be ambidextrous, so your right hand and the left hand can be comfortable. You know.
It seems simple from an uneducated vantage point. It seems simple enough to have a factory make left-handed and right-handed knives. What you might think is, well, just flip the design over, just do it the other way. But in reality, it has to be a lot of extra work to talk
Yes.
them through making it left-handed
Well,
because it just isn't that simple.
it's like I think it has to do with machine time.
Yeah.
And also, I've spoken to knife makers before, and they absolutely refuse to build left-handed knives, right? And I'm like, why? You're just cutting out the other way. They're like, no, Liang, your brain has to think like a left-hander, and their brain isn't thinking like a left-hander.
Well,
And
you need all new fixturing. Your
yeah,
tool paths are backwards. Like there's lots of things that are different. So it's not as simple as just flipping it over.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I've been very lucky to be able to have some left-handed knives for my
Mhm.
for my customers. And you know, I sometimes I wish I ordered more because at first I was like, let me just order 5 just to see if anybody will want it, right? And of course, that's the one that sells out first, and then
Right.
everyone keeps asking me like, hey, when you gonna get more of those lefties in? And it's just like, God, kill me now, you know?
On Facebook, there's an EDC for lefties group.
Yes.
And I can tell you for sure, I'm in that group because I'm left-handed. And I can tell you for sure that those guys try very, very hard to support anybody that builds left-handed knives because they know that it's inconvenient and they know that it's not easy. So when they see somebody's making one, they really go out of their way, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's funny for me, like I got a right-handed field duty and I flipped the clip over. I had thought that I had ordered a lefty, but it turns out moving the clip over, I don't mind at all. It's wonderful. So um, it's I have so many right-handed knives. I'm honestly not used to doing left-handed locks. Sometimes they feel different.
Yes. And that's the thing a lot of other knife companies tell me because I told them I built like left-handed knives and they're like, why? And they're like,
Yeah.
well, because they're lefty. They're like, yeah, but the lefties don't buy the lefty knives. They usually buy right-handed knives. So it's just like, what can you do?
Sound like my grade school teacher trying to talk me out of it. Brian Brand said that one of his absolute favorite knives he owns is a lefty kitchen utility folder 4.0.
Thank you, Brian.
So grateful to Liong for doing this. Absolutely. Now, the 4.0 refers to the blade length. Isn't that true?
Yes. Yes.
I like that you kind of are consistent with your numbering on your knives so
Yeah.
that once you know the nomenclature, you can look at it and you know what a knife's going to be. It's
Yeah.
pretty nice.
And next year, early next year, there will be a 3.5 cuff.
Oh, nice.
So everybody, there were like when the Cuff 3 EDC 3 came out and then the Cuff EDC 4 came out, people were like, the 3 is too small for me and the 4 is too big for me. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do 3.5 then. How about that?
3.5 is a nice size. It
Yeah,
really is. Like it's sort of a Goldilocks length, somewhere between like 2.25 and or sorry, 3.25 and 3.5 seems
yeah,
to be just right for almost everyone.
yeah. And that's the thing. Like we start, like my personal preference will always be like a 4-inch knife, right?
Yep.
But I also live in Florida where it's hot all the time. So do I always want like a 5-ounce knife on me? Not really.
Nope. But you do need the gator repellent. So
Yes, yes,
4-inch blade, not a bad choice.
yes.
I wanted to ask you about intended users for your knife. So when I think about certain knife brands, they sort of identify as like a bushcrafting knife or as a survival knife, or some of them are or what you might call like an executive carry or a gentleman's carry. Who do
Right.
you imagine is the ideal user for your products?
So the thought behind Leomar design has always been to build it where it lasts forever. So someone who really treasures this knife can pass it on to their future generation. And so it's for everybody who, like, I grew up carrying a pocket knife every day, and I grew up in New York City. I went to Catholic school, and eventually went to a public high school. And it's like, nobody ever say shit to me about carrying a pocket knife. All right.
Right. Right.
Until like the last 10 years, we started hearing all this stuff. Um, uh, but it's like for everybody who carries a knife on a daily basis and just uses the knife for an EDC. Now, you're not going to carry a $600 to $1,000 knife backpacking with you
Right.
normally, right? So I would not imagine that line to be in the backpacker where they're digging out their peanut butter, and cutting the salami and stuff like that. But can it do it? Yes. And it'll do it in style. Um, but so the executives, the people who love knives and love a very well made product and design that speaks to them, and the eutectic line would be for people who actually want to use it as a beater. And so we price it as such, and also price it for and finishes that you don't mind getting a scratch on it. You don't mind dropping it in dirt or sand or get water on it. Um, but the Leon line can do all that too. But you might feel a little bit bad afterwards if you scratched up your knife. But that's what knives are for.
Well, I think you put it well. It's a knife. You're going to be doing it in style. It's something that you can use your whole life. It's going to last. It's a durable product, but it's also designed for everyday use. But when I think of your product, I think of it as being rather premium, also in terms of features and in look and design. Generally, you don't find a knife as, I don't know, just ergonomically pleasant at low prices. But
Yeah.
your knives are really thoughtful in the way that you design them. The Eutectic line is really interesting. I hadn't seen one until you sent me a couple recently to check out. And for the price, they're an absolute bargain. You get all the ergonomically pleasant parts of your other knives, but in a really affordable package. Now, what do they street price at?
The street price is like retail is 85. So I've sold them at like 75 at shows. And yeah, I mean, right now we're approaching different distributors for them. Who is ringing my doorbell
Uh
here?
oh.
Hold on a second.
Sure. So if you're not familiar, the Eutectic line from Liong Ma is it's a G10 handled liner lock knife with, I believe, a 3.5 inch blade. It might be even a bit longer than that. They come coated or they can come stonewashed and available in multiple colors and really premium, well made knife for that budget line. You're going to find that it's price competitive with a lot of other makers out there in the market. But one thing I really liked about your knife, Leong, was the pivot. It was wonderful. Those things
Thank
just
you.
fly open. So very usable knife.
Thank you so much. And that was some guy trying to pitch me on new solar panels that I don't need for my roof.
Maybe
So
he needs a knife. Did he need a knife?
Maybe, yeah,
I
maybe.
have a design criteria that's important to me with knives. Like I many times in my life, I've been on a ladder working on my house and I need to cut something. And I go into my pocket and I pull the knife out. Can I deploy the blade, use the knife, and put it back with one hand? Or do I have to let go of the ladder with my other hand in order to open and close the knife? And
Hmm.
to me, it's dangerous. And a work site, same thing. Like I don't want to have to do that. And sometimes you end up making a lot of cuts. So one example might be like hanging Christmas lights in your home, and you're going to wire tie or zip tie it up there, and you want to cut off the remainder. I want a knife that's going to deploy easily, be put away easily. One-handed operation is important to me, and I find that your knives are very, very good at that. They also slide in and out of the pocket well. Can you talk a little bit about the secret magic in your pocket clip?
Oh, it's not my secret magic. It's part of the factory secret magic, and we go over this time and time again because like pocket pocket clip retention, of course, is one of the topics of like you want the retention, but you don't want it to be like you have to like really yank it out. So it's one of these
Yeah,
things that you know, uh, I'm glad the factory actually do like tests and see like, hey, can this actually go into my pocket and come out without me like having to exert my full strength on it? And it's as we are making these knives, we kind of keep testing it, and every single one of my designs I carry around with me for a couple of months. So I'll receive a sample and then I'll test it. I'll open it, I'll close it, I'll open it a lot, I'll flip it out, and I'll actually use it in my yard. And I'll use it in my when I'm taking care of my trees and when I'm cleaning up all the foliage and everything and just doing yard work. So
right.
that's like my basis for how these go. And really, I'm also looking to see like how well the finishes hold up, right?
Hmm.
Because like that's one of the tests is like, okay, am I going to scratch this blade up, or is this finish going to hold up over time? And is it going to rust on me? Everything rusts. All metals rust, especially here in Florida. You leave anything outside, it's going to rust.
Right.
But anyone that is taking care of their blades, like wiping it down afterwards, or even running it under tap water to flush out the pivot and then letting it dry, that's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Then that's just to proper maintain your tools, and they'll last you. You know,
Hmm.
yeah.
The I was setting you up to talk a little bit about on your pivot on your pocket clips.
Yes,
You generally put a bearing underneath the clip.
yes.
The reason I
So
love it so much is it glides in and out with low friction on the pocket, but it's actually very, very sturdy in that there's not a lot of flex in the pocket clip. So it grabs well, but the point of contact is so small,
yeah,
it'll end up gliding in and out.
so the bearings are round, and the hole that it sits in is just slightly oblong. So the two sides where it contacts the ball actually holds in the ball and allows that ball to rotate.
Mm,
So it doesn't just sit flat the whole time, and allows the ball to rotate as it goes in and out of your pocket. And what I love about that the ball is it puts all the pressure on one point, right? So
right,
it's not this. We I've had clips where it was like a quarter-inch length of titanium where it contacted, and those did work, but it was a longer point of contact.
right,
And because of a longer point of contact, there was more drag. This was a
right.
lot smoother. And there's still people who like it and don't like it. But, you know, it is what it is.
I spend a lot of time being critical of pocket clips in my mind as I'm using a knife or keeping a knife. And there are very few knives that I own where I'm unhappy with the pocket clip.
Yeah.
And to me, it can be a deal breaker because ultimately, when I'm carrying the knife, I need to be able to trust it. I need to be able to get it in and out of my pocket. I need to be able to put it away. It needs to not cut into my hand. And with your knives, like you've managed to nail all of those little points. So
Thank you.
for me
Thank
personally, I
you.
think they're great.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And sometimes people don't notice because we look at the knives, but we don't look at how it feels in your hand until we
Right,
actually get it in hand.
right.
Yeah.
Can you think back on all your designs, do you have a particular design that's your favorite or one that you think you're most proud of?
There's several. There's several. So I love the way the Warrior 2 looks.
Yeah.
That romantic Japanese tanto grind. Um, that was a knife that I wanted like Bob Lum to make, right? And Bob, we being friends, he was like, Leon, I don't do flippers, man. He's like, I'm too old to be doing flippers. And this was when flippers was just starting to come out. And all my designs were flippers. And he was like, I'm too old for that stuff. Go ask someone else to do it. And he was like, and so I asked him, like, so you don't mind me doing that blade? He's like, that blade has been around for like 10,000 years.
Right. It's not my
So,
design.
you know, he's like, a lot of makers. One of them are going to make you that design, but Riyadh has been able to nail that design down flawlessly.
Yeah.
Um, the two that are probably the most well known are probably the field duty and the cuff.
Yeah.
And the cuff came first, and it was like my version of like a folding chef knife, right? A folding
Mhm.
kitchen knife. And then I looked at the design, and I was like, I like the drop blade, but I also want to add like an index finger notch, and that's how the field duty was born. The really early versions of the field duty, the front part of the handle matched the front part of the cuff.
Mm.
And it was only later on I slightly angled them differently enough. And
Yeah.
because of the rotation angle of the field duty, I was able to incorporate that wide spear point blade into it. You know,
Okay.
and that's what really spoke to a lot of people, because I always want my blades to be the dominant, not the handles. Like the handles being bigger than the blade doesn't work for me. I want the blades to be bigger than the handles.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So those three really stand out. And there are a lot of other ones like the Lanny is really popular. And people ask me like, why did I name this modern design Lanny when it doesn't look like the traditional Lanny at all? I'm like, yeah, it's a modern traditional. So
Yeah. I've only known a couple Lannies in my life, and they were generally it's an old man name.
yes.
It's quite a throwback name.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I think of the cuff as being very you. Like it's just when I first saw that knife, I was like, boy, there's nothing else like this out there. It's very original design. The the field duty, of course, is I don't know. It's like it's all the things that I really like in a knife all distilled down into one knife.
Yeah.
So, but then I don't know. And I look across the rest of your line, there's little things that I like about each one. So for me, it's hard to pick.
Yeah. I mean, I do experiments. Like I've done like more modern traditionals like the Zulu and the Hawk. And those were more like, because I know not everybody likes like a 3.5 to 4 inch knife. So I did like a much smaller knife. Um, and the new GSD, which has been very popular, is 3.5 inch.
Yeah.
Um, and then the Tanto one was like my version of a Kwaiken folder,
Hmm.
which was like, how many more ways can I do a Tanto? And this was one of the ways that I have never done a Tanto before. So I wanted to put that in there. And then later on this year, there'll be the Warrior 3 coming, and that's an upswept Tanto design.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like when I look at something like, okay, there's like a Tanto. The Warrior 2 is a little bit upswept, but pretty much straight. But then the Warrior 3 will be more upswept, altogether. Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about where we can find you in social media? Of course, we're broadcasting this on YouTube. We're broadcasting it in your Facebook group, of course, so those folks know where to find you. But what about your website?
My website is leongma.com. And of course, Instagram and Facebook, with you guys and Leoma Design Space. Uh, yeah, yeah, and feel free to always reach out to me. You know.
Looks like you have a sale going on right now.
Yep.
15% off for Father's Day.
Yep. It's up until tomorrow.
That's pretty cool. Your website's very easy to navigate. I like that you have thumbnail pictures of everything. If I want to learn more about it, I can click in and I can get more. Looks like you've
Thank
got some
you.
cool clip upgrades right now on the main page. Is that right?
Yeah. So people have been asking me for a while now for like different clips, like Mokutai clips,
Yeah,
and finally got them in and put them all up. Uh, that is just like one of the easiest way to upgrade your knife. Got the eutectics up, and it's very easy to switch from the Liong knives to the eutectic page. And we're going to be adding more of the eutectics as time go on. I've received some of the Trinities now with black blades too, so that will be going up shortly.
I see you're using 14C 28N steel. So
Yes.
that's a really nice, versatile steel. It's easy to sharpen, had good edge retention.
Yeah.
Nice little steel, stainless.
Yeah. And it keeps a good edge, and that's one of the things that people like is that stainless keeps a good edge, easy to resharpen,
Yeah,
and we have a really good stock on the thinness on the stock. It's like the same thickness as all my other blades, 0.145. So it really glides through everything.
you got
Yeah.
three-way opening. You got a flipper tab. You got a window, and then you also have top flipper. It's pretty
Yes.
cool. Fidget friendly, everybody.
Well, that was the thing that I was thinking about with the cuff too, because I realized like a lot of people fidget with their knives when they're at the
Yep,
desk, or if they're sitting on the couch watching TV. They're just playing with their knives, and a flipper is one way. But if you can incorporate another way or two other ways, then people can just like have a ball playing with their knives.
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, Liong, did I miss anything? Did we leave anything out?
No, that was it. I think we
Feel
covered all
good?
the points. Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad everybody could join us today. We had some comments come in earlier. I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation, but Jimmy, thanks for watching.
Thank you,
We got,
Jimmy.
we got Carl here. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
Sick Nasty's always tuning in.
Thank you. Thank you. Next.
And Eric Mason, I believe you met Eric at Blade Show.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric.
Looks like he enjoyed some designs. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Warrior 3. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Liong, thanks for doing this today. I'm glad we could have a chance to catch up, and I hope this helps everybody get to know a little bit more about you and your designs, and now they know where to get them.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Jason, for your time and always helping me out. I really appreciate this.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. Take care.